In today's show, what to stick in ravioli, how to treat your aubergine, and how to mistreat your seitan, plus our first ever triple tofu dish. Is this a record? And welcome to the Vegan Life magazine podcast. It's the podcast that's all about vegan food and how to eat it. We're here to offer advice and inspiration for your vegan cooking. Be you concerned auntie desperately trying to stay relevant to your freshly vegan nephew who's obviously got in with the wrong crowd at uni, or if you've been vegan long enough to remember when fake meat was a bowl of rehydrated TVP. This is definitely the podcast for you. I'm Jake Yapp, senior puerile columnist at Vegan Life magazine, and today I have two chefs with me who are going to transport us on cauliflower wings. If I were to say to you, je vous souhaite un bon appétit et mangez bien, then you would realize that I speak no Italian. Because today, among other things, we're going to be looking at Italian food. And the two amazing chefs I have with me are going to help to take your plant-based pasta dishes to, never mind the next level. This is like 9 levels up, easily. Hampshire started his career when he was 16, working in a bakery while studying for his A-levels before becoming head chef of London's first vegan pasta restaurant at the age of 18. Is there more than one? I don't know. Since then, he's hosted many vegan supper club events as well as private catering events, and he's making bags of cheese. I'm sure he'll tell us more about that. Nadia, how do I say your surname?
Fragnito.
Fragnito, okay.
Oh. Yeah, just
I didn't know if it was like Fragnito. I didn't know if it was like a hair.
Fragnito.
See.
Do you want to say Fragnito?
I'll say whatever you want. Nadia Fragnito. Yeah, I'm sorry, I went all British there.
Fragnito. No, Fragnito is fine. Yeah.
Nadia Fragnito is a vegan Italian expert, as we've already established, and author of Discovering Vegan Italian. Her articles and recipes have featured in countless magazines, and she's a veteran vegan of 20 years standing. Wow, you must be able to remember the dark days of chips and side salads. Wait, you're having chips for tea? Only. Old habits die hard. I want to talk about Italy because you've been there a lot. Obviously, you've got Italian heritage.
Yes. My dad was from southern Italy, so he was born there, and then he came out to Australia when he was about 9.
Yeah, and Italy seems to be a country where the food varies enormously region by region.
Yeah, you're totally right. So in the south, it's quite vegan friendly, actually. So it's a good place for vegans to go, and because they use mostly olive oil as opposed to in the north where they use butter and more cream. So the further north you go, the more it's perhaps more French influenced. So in the south, also traditionally, conventionally a bit poorer. So they would cook with less animal products.
Ah, okay. So just grass, cobbles, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a good thing to be poor when it comes to vegan Italian food because they're using the simple foods that, plant-based cooking is based on.
Yeah. People always sort of talk about, there's that sort of classic cliche that, I couldn't afford to be vegan. But you're right. It is basically peasant food, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And it's exciting because they really focus on flavor instead of, trying to be impressive or, how stylish this dish might be. It's like, let's fill up our stomachs. Let's put a hell of a lot of flavor in it. And so in the end, you have some really simple, just satisfying food.
Yeah. I eat in a very survivalist way. If there's 10 donuts for £1, I'll just eat them. I'm just trying to survive.
Well done, you.
Thanks very much. Let's jump in then. There were so many questions. People are really excited to hear what you've got to say. And I thought this was a good place to start. Alfonso, who, is that an Italian name or is it Spanish?
Alfonso. Yeah, why not?
Sure. He's Italian now. Sorry if Alfonso. Alfonso, I see. He asks, how do you make great pasta without using eggs? Which was kind of my jumping off point for this show. Let's start with you, Henry. How would you do it? You just did a masterclass, in fact.
It is fairly simple. It's just water and pasta flour, essentially. And then you can mix in different flavourings and seasonings as well. So in my masterclass, I'll be implementing turmeric into the pasta dough itself. So not only is turmeric a superfood, but also it looks like it is fresh egg pasta. So that fresh egg pasta has the yellow tinge to it, which the turmeric will bring, as well as adding health benefits. So yeah, if you've got the right ratio of pasta flour to water, season it with salt, and then just get a lot of elbow grease in there and knead it for about 10 to 15 minutes until it all comes together.
Right.
Work the gluten, and then you've got a beautiful pasta dough.
Amazing.
It's simple. I don't know if Nadia has any other methods to create vegan pasta, but that's the way I've been doing it for years now.
I pass out after 2 minutes of kneading, so this is not an option for me. Nadia, how would you do it?
Henry's spot on. It is so simple, yet I think people have this preconception that it's complicated, that, oh my gosh, how did you pasta with eggs? But as we're talking about in the South, it's really common to make fresh pasta without eggs, and particularly ones like shaped pasta. So if you're looking at like orecchiette, what they call them, little ears.
Yeah.
They are always traditionally made without eggs. Shapes, rather than, I guess, fettuccine or, tagliatelle, the ribbon type pasta, they're more likely to have eggs in them. But these pasta shapes, they're just, flour and water. They use a couple of different types of flour. I'm not sure if, Henry, what flour you're using in your masterclass. I'd love to hear that. But they can often make a semolina with semolina flour, which is kind of like, it's semolina, but it's a finer grain. And in Australia, it's a lot harder to find unless you go to those specialty stores. So they'd use it for a more durable, harder pasta.
If it's more finely done, does that mean the gluten releases more easily or something? Or is it just, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know. Well, in terms of the grain, I think it's better with the semolina flour because you don't need the eggs, because they're going to give you a harder kind of a pasta shape that holds together better.
Yeah.
So in terms of gluten stuff, I don't know, but it holds together better.
How do you make pasta look like a little ear?
Oh no, that
Do you
is fun.
just thumb it into your own ear?
Okay, so you first of all roll it. Here I'm demonstrating, but this isn't actually going to be video, is it?
Gesticulate as much as you. I mean, this is Italian.
I'll do
Come
both.
on, you can't not.
It is. It helps. It helps.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you just get a piece of dough from your big clump of dough and you roll it out into like a snake, and then or a rope, and you cut pieces off, kind of like gnocchi size, whatever you like. And then either using a knife, like a butter knife, or your thumb, you take one end and you roll it and then put it onto your thumb and flip it back the other way, and that creates like a little hollow, like an ear shape, little ear.
Amazing.
How would you describe it, Henry?
I do the exact same thing. Roll it out into a thin snake and then cut it, and then use a butter knife against the board, and it will roll up as you go against it. It will just fold up, and then you can fix it with your fingers.
What's the fanciest pasta shape in your repertoires, Henry?
I'd say by hand, I like to make sort of rigatone. It's sort of the most out there one. I think when I make pasta
Which
by
one's
hand,
rigatone?
I usually stick to...
I'm just going to be gleefully ignorant
So
throughout all of
rigatone
this.
is like the thick penne, the big tube.
Okay.
Usually when I'm making it by hand, sort of at home, I'll stick to ravioli or tagliatelle.
Yeah.
Just because they're quick and easier to cut and make.
Yeah.
Other than that, if I'm in the workplace with a big pasta machine, then whatever the settings can do.
Is it like one of those Play-Doh toys? Be honest. Is it just got a thing on it and you put the thing on it?
So you can get ones like that where you just put the flour in, put the water in, and then leave it. Come back half an hour later, and you've got a kilo of penne.
Can I make spaghetti with an old Play-Doh barber shop kit?
Surely.
I think the pasta dough's a bit too thick, but you can give it a go.
I'm going to give it a go.
I'd love to see you film that and put it up on the Instagram.
Do not, because I will, because I'm
Jake.
needy. I'm needy. Nadia, what about you? What's your killer pasta shape?
Oh, I actually have really enjoyed learning some that I'd never grown up with. So when I went to Italy, I learnt a couple of different shapes, and one is a lot of fun. You roll out, I guess there's two types. One's busiate from Sicily, and another one is sagna torte from puglia, and they both kind of are like corkscrew kind of shape. So one, buziate, you use this kind of long bamboo skewer, and you take a long piece of dough, a little bit like a rope, and you twist it around it, but you have the pasta folding around and wrapping around the bamboo skewer, and then you pull it off, and it's kind of like a corkscrew, or like a telephone, old school telephone. Hello. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And ravioli, I love ravioli too, and they're great to do just by hand. Yeah. But you don't actually need fancy equipment to create pasta shapes. That's what I think people may like to know. But I am curious, Henry, how do you make a rigatone without a pasta machine? I want to know.
You just roll out like sheets using a rolling pin, and then get a long tube, sort of like a really thin cookie cutter or something like that, that sort of got that shape, and wrap it around, and then use a dab of water along the seam and push it together, and then you've got you can make it as long as you want, and then cut them into small rigatoni.
Amazing. Very cool.
That's how I do it. That's great. You want to make loads at one time, just get a broomstick and wrap it around.
I was going to say a broomstick as a joke, and you actually do. That's amazing.
If you have a clean broomstick wrapped in cling film, then you can give it a go.
There's so many things you can do with a clean broomstick wrapped in cling film. Let's move swiftly on to, we were talking about ravioli. We touched on it. So let's just go straight to that. Owen wrote to us to say, two questions. What do I do about the anchovies in things like puttanesca? And please tell me your favorite ravioli fillings. Nadia, let's start with you.
Well, with the puttanesca, it's such a salty dish, I don't even worry about trying to replace the anchovy. The saltiness of the capers and the black olives should do that. But I have found this really cool vegan fish sauce on the market that if you put a splash in, that maybe it just gives that slight anchovy taste. That's if you can find the vegan fish sauce. You could even make it yourself, maybe cut up a little bit of dried sea vegetable nori, sprinkle in some wakame or something like that. So that could be a fun way, an experiment to do that. Ravioli, I love basing it on what my nonna used to make. She called it panzerotti, but panzerotti, when you look it up on the net, it's like fried
the best
pizza dough.
Operatic tenor of all. Oh, go on.
No, I want you to sing. So anyway, she would make this particular filling for my dad, and he loved it. One year I learned how to do it for like a birthday present to him. And it was ricotta. And of course, instead of ricotta, I used tofu, like an extra firm tofu, whiz it up in, say, a food processor with parsley, not spinach. Parsley, continental Italian parsley, just gives it that extra flavour that, say, spinach might not, because spinach is quite bland unless it's cooked.
Is that the curly parsley or the flat leaf parsley?
It's got to be flat leaf.
Okay.
None of this curly stuff. Nothing against
curly. If you've only got curly, can you just iron it?
Yes. Curly is fine. If that's all you've got, curly is fine. And then, just a little bit of, I guess, nutritional yeast flakes or some vegan parmesan and a bit of black salt or kala namak if you want to go crazy to replicate the egg flavor that you normally put in. Yeah, so that inside the ravioli with just a simple tomato sugo, tomato sauce reminds me of what my nonna would make. That's my go-to.
I remember years ago watching a Jamie Oliver series where he was on this quest to find like the greatest Italian food of all time. And he, after sort of 3 or 4 episodes of traveling around, trying just like the perfect basic tomato sauce. And he concluded that, the best tomato sauce is the one your nonna made. Like there is no definitive, it's always going to be the one your mum made. Yeah. Henry, what about you? What do you stick in ravioli?
I'd say a really simple sort of garlic mushroom ravioli filling. It's super easy to make. Blitz up the mushrooms with some garlic, a lot of flat leaf parsley, as Nadia said. Fry it off with some oil, salt and pepper, and then you've got a beautiful sort of easy mushroom and garlic ravioli filling. Other than that, a more traditional Italian one as well that I did a lot back in the old Italian restaurant is Zuccotti pumpkin ravioli filling, which is using pumpkin, mostarda, which is like it's like an Italian fermented fruit thing. So it's got like wonderful flavors in it, but it is like sort of fermented. So if you smell it, it'll sort of knock you for six. But once you mix it in with pumpkin that have been pureed and then also almonds as well as nutritional yeast, then you get a beautiful pumpkin filling.
Mostarda,
I don't know if
Mostarda.
Nadia knows about mostarda to explain more, but
I've learned something new completely. It sounds fascinating as a flavour.
I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah, Google it. Please tell us.
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
Mostarda di frutta, a northern Italian condiment made of candied fruit and a mustard-flavoured syrup. That's freaky.
Wow.
I love it.
That was it.
It is.
That was it.
That's really
Where is it from?
exciting. Lombardy.
Oh, in the north.
That's really exciting. Oh, wow.
That's cool.
I'm all over that. Top
So
tip.
We're all writing this one down.
Open the jar and give it a sniff. You'll never want to use it in your cooking. So maybe hold your nose, put it in, and then give it a smell afterwards.
But those are my favourite things. I mean, I can't believe I've got to show 5 and not talked about it. But have you used fermented tofu?
No, tempehs as far as I've
Oh,
gone.
don't get me started on tempeh, all right? Because anyone who's listened to more than one episode of the show will know that I have no time for tempeh.
Give it some time. Go on a few dates. You probably have, haven't you?
I've flirted, I've heavy petted with tempeh, but I can't. I can't.
Okay,
If
then.
you
can't
want
get
cake,
there.
when lockdown's over, come over. I'll cook you a tempeh dish. I'll leave.
I will.
Have a nice date with the tempeh dish, and let's see how it goes.
If you could have an accordion and sing, "Oh, this is the night," and we'll see, where the spaghetti goes. But I can't. Anyway. There's a whole nother thing. Fermented tofu, though, I've used it. If you haven't tasted it, it is nothing like tofu. It's really salty. It's got this incredibly pungent, kind of like what you were saying about mostarda. It's like when you first get a whiff, you might be kind of like, whoa, now. But if you miss like blue cheese, like Stilton, like really, really pungent flavor, I've just stirred it. There was a pasta chain years and years ago in Britain, and I used to love. They did a dish that was just pasta with like blue cheese and like lemon zest and maybe a little nutmeg, I think. And that was basically it. And I loved it. And I recreated it with fermented tofu. And it was so good.
Wow. That is on the shopping list now
good
for me.
Well, I'll give it a go.
Try it. Like, I mean, it's just as a flavor note, it's unlike anything else out there, I think. Because, we just touched on, what do you do about anchovy? And I kind of maintain that there are analogues for almost every flavour except that kind of really funky bucket of fish heads ghastliness that's just so good. But yeah, those are brilliant. Well, look, we've been talking about tempeh. Let's move on to my actual favourite. Let's ask the perennial question. What do you do with tofu? Yes, what do you do with tofu? We've had some amazing suggestions. I've got to say, I tried Anton Petrov we had last time, and he had the suggestion to do a thing with fermented gram flour slurry. It was amazing. I made this kind of scramble with it and tofu, and it had some weird eggy note that was not like the Kalanamak sulfur thing. It's a kind of like a high, greasy kind of, I can't describe it, but it was transcendently good. But let's find out, what do you do with your tofu, Henry?
Are we sticking to Italian or are we going out there?
You can go wherever you like with this question. This is your wild card.
I'd say if you want to keep it simple, then get a pan on a really high heat with some oil. Because with tofu, sometimes you just don't want to crumble it. You want to keep it in sort of those cube shapes so you keep some of the structure. So you want to sort of really crispy outside and still have a bit of that soft inside to the tofu. Cut it into sort of centimeter cubes and then fry it on a really high temperature, covering it in spices. So I'd usually go with like smoked paprika, rosemary, salt and pepper, and some chili as well. Cook it, flip it around so each side sort of got a bit of charring on it. It's beautiful golden brown, but don't like shimmy it too much, otherwise it will crack, and then you'll sort of lose the whole point of that like structural integrity which you want to keep.
That sounds good. I like the rosemary idea.
That's what I'd say. Keep it super simple.
Oh, I just want to ask on that one, would you, Henry, use an extra firm tofu or would you use one that's a bit softer?
So I'd use a firm tofu. Extra firm, that's what works, but still press it if you can. If you have a tofu press, or just kitchen roll and some heavy bucks to get out the excess water. Or if you want to use extra firm, then you don't really need to press it at all and just fry it off. and make sure the pan's on a high heat so it doesn't like crumble and fall apart. You want to keep each side charred to give it that sort of strength.
I'm trying to think of something. Well, yeah, I was talking before. I'd love to turn it into ricotta. So yeah, blending it up. But one other thing I really love doing is, and it might link to something else we talk about later, but I love creating tofu bacon for like a carbonara dish. And also I love using, so the extra firm for the bacon and then the soft silken tofu for like an egg yolk kind of sauce for the carbonara. So it's like the carbonara is like a double tofu whammy kind of thing.
I can tell you had to turn it into a triple whammy in a second, but go on.
Okay, right. Okay, I won't try and think of that. I'll lose my train of thought. But here we go. So with the tofu bacon, slice it, with like a mandolin. So it's really nice,
right.
Really thin shaved slices. So it looks more maybe like a pancetta than a bacon. And then you make a marinade with soy sauce, liquid smoke, and some water, and toss that tofu in, leave it for a little bit.
And is this like extra firm tofu?
Correct, extra firm tofu. And then once you drain it, get some oil, like a decent amount of oil. Don't be shy about it because this is a fatty dish because, bacon is fat. And get that nice and hot and then fry off those tofu bacon pieces or pancetta pieces there, and they turn quite crispy if you cook it for a while, or you can go a bit softer and juicy. So those, just with the liquid smoke and the soy sauce, create that really bacony flavor. So they are great. And then with the egg yolk sauce, silken tofu in a blender with kala namak again for the egg flavor, turmeric for the yellow egg color like Henry was talking about with his pasta, and nutritional yeast flakes or vegan parmesan, some, salt and pepper, that kind of thing. Maybe a dash of oil if you're being naughty, like a light flavored oil. And then that goes through the cooked spaghetti. So along with the bacon.
That sounds so good. Shall I tell you how to turn this into a triple tofu event?
Yes.
I haven't done this for years, but I found paper tofu. Have you ever seen paper tofu? So this this is another thing that you'll find mainly.
Is it tofu skin?
No. That's those kind of dried bean curd things. It's not that. Yeah. No, this is another thing you'll find in like an Oriental supermarket. But this is tofu. So it's like 1 millimeter thick, and it comes in sheets. It's kind of like A3 tofu.
Wow.
And what you can do is you can just cut it into ribbons and just treat it like egg pasta. It's quite chewy, like it's proper al dente stuff. Wow. But you can just throw it straight in the pan, kind of saute it a bit. And so you could do your tofu sauce with your tofu bacon and have tofu pasta. Come on, we got to try that. We got to try that.
Look what we've just created. Okay, so now you've got to use that special Play-Doh thing. Now we've got to create this triple threat tofu carbonara.
Yeah.
There's one for all the tofu haters out there.
Yes.
3 tofus in one.
Yeah, that's what you do with tofu.
I think we should just do a whole podcast on how many tofus you get in a dish.
What about a parmesan? You know how quite often you put a bit of parmesan on top. I'm sure there's a tofu parmesan
tofu
recipe.
Cheese.
Yes.
You can make a tofu cheese. You can put a bit of the fermented tofu in to help the eggy flavour.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I love this challenge.
You can do crispy tofu shavings on the top.
Oh, filth. I love it. Those are brilliant. Thank you both so much for those. Let's go to, I like this question. This is from Julie. I always like it when people come with a strong opinion. Aubergine and okra are slimy and the 2 most awful ingredients in the world. Can you persuade me otherwise? Personally, I mean, aubergine is just fabulous because it's literally a sponge for olive oil, as far as I'm concerned. And I just wring it out into my mouth. But Henry, change Julie's mind.
As you just said, you can do so many things with aubergine. You can make baba ganoush, which, coming from Iranian heritage, baba ganoush with pita bread. I can have that 3 meals a day, 7 days a week.
Tell me how you do it. Because I've never made particularly good baba ganoush.
Char the aubergine as much as you can. Sort of get it black on the outside, black on the inside, and then just blend it up with salt, bit of tahini, lemon juice, and you've got a beautiful baba ganoush. Pretty simple. If you need to loosen it, you can use bits of water.
Yeah.
Can I ask how you like to char it?
Well, in my kitchen, I don't have an open flame fired gas hob, but I would say just hold it with a pair of tongs over a big flame on the gas hob until it's charred. Or if you have like an open fire outside, put it like you do a marshmallow on a stick, like a rotisserie aubergine.
Nice.
But otherwise, I do it on a dry pan. I get a dry pan on the highest heat I can, leave it to sort of till it's all smoking, and then press it down really hard on all sides so you get the char in the skin. Again, using a pair of tongs and pushing it hard down against the pan. I actually did a masterclass on an aubergine dish. I did a charred aubergine, which was cut it in half, and then I did a crisscross. You cut a crisscross into the aubergine side to stop the skin from buckling up, and then you char the skin on a super high heat, and you get the black char lines across it, and then also char the front, so then it opens up the gaps that you sliced into a bit. Stuff garlic and rosemary into the gaps, so you get the flavour the whole way through the aubergine. Drizzle it over with oil, salt, pepper, smoked paprika. Get it in the oven with some cherry tomatoes. Cook some lentils, and then you've got a beautiful dish of a charred aubergine on a bed of Mediterranean lentils.
Oh,
a gorgeous
that
dish
is,
that you can try.
Can I ask a quick question?
That is sexy food.
That is, I mean, aubergines, yeah. When you see a recipe and it calls for a clove of garlic, how much do you actually put in?
At the moment in my cooking, me and my girlfriend live together, and she can't eat onion or garlic, so there's no onions and garlic going in any of my dishes.
What? Ouch.
It's true what they say, you marry your allergy.
Your allergy.
Yeah. Henry, do you have any tips on okra before we move to Nadia?
Yeah, so again, you can just get the whole point of slime is because of the water that's released from it mixed in with its own like sugars create a slimy texture. So if you fry it or for long enough, then all the water evaporates and you're left with the vegetable without any of that excess slimy water. Although with okra, I'd say you can sometimes use its sliminess to its benefit. If you put it in sort of a stew or a curry, which they do a lot with okra in the Middle East, and you can use that sliminess to sort of give the curry a silky texture.
Right.
So yeah, I'd usually do it in like a tomato-based curry with okra and spices, and that sliminess helps give it like a gloss to the curry itself.
Or you can always just grease your bike with it. Nadia.
Oh, they were great suggestions, Henry. And I love what you said about okra because okra, I actually kind of enjoy that weird sensation when you bite into it. Right? I'm like, bring it on. Bring on that texture. If there's a bit of slime, in curry or whatever, or in a sauce, it's all part of the experience. So, but I haven't cooked with it a lot. Just, if I do, I might add it, to a stew or like a dry potato and capsicum kind of vegetable dish. But with eggplant, I mean, it's going to be a bit cliched, but I'm going to go with the eggplant parmigiana, of course.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had a friend come over for dinner and I served him up the eggplant parmigiana, and then afterwards he goes, Nadia, I just got to tell you something. I hate eggplant. I loathe it.
Oh, no.
But I really liked this. So I was like, oh, thank God. But thank you for telling me now because that was the main dish of this whole evening. But
it's a heart-stopping compliment, that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is a bit. And I've had other people go, I hate eggplant. I'm like, well, I'm going to give you the parmigiana and see what you think. But there's something that happens, like what you said before, Jake, when you let it soak up a heap of olive oil, and if you crumb it and then you put it between some, oozy vegan cheese with some beautiful passata, then, something really amazing happens. It's rich, it's indulgent, it's incredibly naughty, but that's eggplant almost at its best, I think.
Yeah, there is nothing not naughty about an aubergine. Hopefully, Julie, that's given you
aubergine. Sorry, aubergine.
So you call it one. It's fine. We'll take any currency.
We understand.
Yeah,
you understand us Aussies. No, and or melanzane in Italiano.
There you go. That's really what we should have said. I'm not going to say that.
Come on, try it.
No, because I'll just look like one of those English people.
At least it only takes 2 hours to get to Italy from where you are. It takes a long time from Australia. So I'm jealous of you all.
Yeah,
Over
I mean,
there,
all of it's
when you get to
academic
travel.
right now. Exactly.
Yeah.
Seb asks this tiny question: what's the greatest dough recipe for a pizza base? And are there any tips for cooking in a home pizza oven? Let's start with you, Henry.
Simple recipe. I mean, even the normal pizza dough recipes are vegan, so I'm sure you can just Google one up and it will come up with any pizza dough recipe. I would say that sourdough pizzas are brilliant, but again, hard to do in the home without sort of a sourdough kit. But yeah, yeast, leave it to rise, give it a lot of resting time. That's what you need with pasta dough, because it will rise a lot. You need to give it sort of a few hours or even overnight in a warm place so it can properly rise before you knock it back and then cut it up into your smaller pieces of dough before you rest them again, and then you roll them out again and knock them back. So yeah, just give it lots of resting time. But yeah, you can follow basically any recipe online. They're all fairly similar. It's all just a simple ratio of water to flour to yeast to salt.
I found in lockdown, I tried to make a loaf of sourdough bread, and what I ended up with was almost a passable pizza base. It was just a frisbee. So there is always that. Nadia, what about you?
Yeah, it is quite simple. I think people overcomplicate it. I've looked up a lot of things online for the perfect pizza, and it's like, why are you going through this huge process? It is just flour. I put a fair bit of yeast in. I like a thick dough, which is almost, I guess, halfway between a focaccia and a pizza. Yeah, I put in a decent amount of dry yeast and it rises quite quickly. But I think potentially the healthier way is to put less yeast. So somewhere between that sort of sourdough where you're putting less yeast but giving it more time to rise and ferment naturally rather than faking it and putting a heap of yeast. Yeah. I find that it's interesting to play around with the oven temperatures as well. Like sometimes mine will go up to 250 degrees Celsius on a fan forced oven. That's as high as mine goes. What's that? What's the conversion in? Do you use?
No, we use Celsius. So
as well,
yeah. But I mean, if anyone was listening and they want it in Fahrenheit, 250 is approximately 7,000. No, I don't know. I'm kidding. I'm making up.
Probably four. Gosh, I don't know. Anyway, or six. Anyway, I won't pretend
just whack
to know,
it up to the top. 11 is what we're saying, really. Just whack it up to 11.
Just 11 on the dial, and you're good. But it'll be like a fast kind of, a fast cook, really hot, and it'll obviously cook for a shorter amount of time, and that's a kind of nice way to do it. Or I've cooked it at 200 to 210 degrees as well, and you just give it some extra time and some extra love, and it'll turn out quite lovely as well. So
so even with that,
to do it at home, you don't need a wood fire
with a slightly thicker crust. It's still okay to cook it at that higher temperature.
I found that. I mean, obviously if you get this big lot of dough and you cut it in half and just put it onto 2 pizza trays, they're going to blow up like a pillow. But if you separate it into, say, 4 pizza trays, and obviously they're going to be, more distributed and less, less thick.
I would say, it's a good tip to have your oven on sort of its higher setting. But I know if you have a pizza stone, but I mean, for home cooking, I'd say just a metal tray. Yeah. If you put it in the oven to heat up whilst you're making the pizza and sorting out the toppings, and then you can take it out and whack it directly, probably upside down, it would fit better, the upside down oven tray, and put it on the back. So then it's got that high heat from the metal, and then that will cook better. Top
pizza toppings, Henry? Come
Mushroom.
On. There's no judgment. There's no judgment. You can say the thing you want to say, really. There's no judgment.
I actually despise pineapple on a pizza, if that's what you want me to say.
Oh, thank God.
Pineapple does not belong on a pizza.
Won't do it.
I'd like to hear people's thoughts on pineapple on pizza. Actually, it's a podcast at veganlifemag.com. And about a month from now, we'll pick that thread up. Nadia, what about you? What do you whack on a pizza?
I actually just recently made a heap of pizzas for catering, and I loved putting on thin slices of parboiled potato and rosemary and some vegan parmesan, made with nooch and cashews, and that was great. And extra oil onto, do what they do in Naples, right? Have you seen what they do?
No.
And they probably do it everywhere all around the world because we're copying them, but just a heap of olive oil over the top before it goes in. It's like, oh, yes.
Yeah, just oil. All the oil.
Just oil.
Brilliant. Ollie has a couple of questions. He says, I made some seitan. It's sitting in the freezer at the moment. Any ideas on how to make it interesting for all of the family who consist of almost vegan, me, down to youngest children who are real carnivores? What do you raise feral children, Ollie? Nadia, let's start with you. What do you do with your seitan?
It's lovely in a stew, so you can just treat it like you would a meat replacement. So it's soaking up all the flavors of the sauce. That's a great way to hide the fact that it's not really meat with your carnivore children. A fun thing that I did for my cookbook was Cottoletta Steak. So it's sort of like a crumbed schnitzel. And for the carnivores, I think that's a good one. So you turn it into take the seitan put it into roll it out into fillet stuff, steak size, and then sort of like a fake egg wash. So that could just be flour and corn flour and water, dip it in that and then coat it in breadcrumbs and then fry it in a pan. And then you could, top it with some, tomato and cheese if you want, or you could just kind of have it plain. I find that kind of thing tastes or almost like the texture improves the next day. I don't know if you guys have found that, Henry, if you found that with seitan, but yeah, something happens. I don't know what the science is, but the next day the texture is better.
I feel like with seitan, the more you abuse it, the happier it is. You know what I mean? Like, you just punch it, boil it, bake it, fry it, like do every conceivable thing you can do to it. And then it's really, and then neglect is the final step, apparently, Nadia. Henry, what about you?
So I think a lot of the seitan comes from what spices you put into the dough itself. If you have a beautiful tasting seitan already, then you can roast it as sort of that meat roast, crisscross the top and put even more flavors into all the grooves, bits of onion put it in a tray bake, and then you can serve it like that with gravy, some roast potatoes and all the trimmings. Other than that, I'd say get it into thin slices, and you can do something like a seitan bacon as well. Pretty much the exact thing that Nadia was saying with the tofu. Do the same with the seitan, and you've got a seitan bacon, which goes beautiful in like a BLT, and you can serve it up for the kids in sandwiches, for lunches. Works really well, I find. But yeah, most of the time, if I'm ever going to the hassle of actually making a seitan block, then it's usually for sort of a family roast, where all the family's around, and we make big roasts, which hasn't been for God knows how long. But yeah, that's sort of the only time I make seitan is for a nice big roast.
I did one for Christmas and covered it in the kind of rice papery stuff. Those sheets that you turn them into the kind of not spring rolls, but you know what I mean.
The rice paper rolls, yeah.
Yeah. And that made the most beautiful
rolls.
Skin on the thing. It was kind of crispy and chewy and filthy. It was really good.
Nice. Oh, I was actually going to say as well, sausages. I've got a recipe on my blog that I make the seitan into, like barbecue style sausages. You just wrap them, create the sausage shape, wrap them in alfoil or baking paper, and then steam them for like 40 minutes and then fry them up after in some oil to sort of sear them.
And then tell them they're worthless and no one likes them because they love it.
Exactly.
Ollie also asks, how can I make a decent vegan macaroni cheese? He stresses, never mac and cheese. # small acts of defiance. Yeah, mac and cheese is encroaching, isn't it? That will please this aforementioned fussy family. Macaroni cheese. I mean, is that now, Nadia, is that kind of like the equivalent of is it the chicken tikka masala? Like it doesn't really exist in Italy, I suspect.
Yes, the authentic Italian in me is dying on the inside.
Sure.
But what I do with vegan Italian is so inauthentic anyway, so I can't possibly judge that. So, but yeah, no, there is no mac and cheese in Italian cooking, but it's so tasty with that fake cheesy sauce. So I guess pretty simply it would be making almost like a bechamel kind of sauce with, vegan butter, flour, soy milk, whatever milk you want, whisking that up, putting a bit of nutritional yeast flakes, of course, salt and pepper. If you've got some vegan meltable cheese that you can get a store-bought version, then a couple of 1 or 2 cups of that in there as well will make it more that sort of stringy macaroni cheese texture. So I think you can do it without it, but that's going to take it to the next level. And obviously folding it through some al dente pasta. You can either oven bake it with some extra toppings, or you can just have it as is. But,
I'm pretty sure Ollie is English, so when you say al dente, what we mean is massively overcooked. Just to be authentic. Well, we need to be authentic.
Al dente is actually slightly undercooked.
Yeah, but this is England, Nadia. It needs to be massively overcooked.
Oh yes, of course. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And sort
softer
of
the better.
Sort of grey in colour. Then it's properly sort of wartime Britain. Henry, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. It starts with sort of a simple bechamel with the flour, butter, milk, and then I'd say nutmeg, bay leaf if you want to leave it to infuse the milk first, and then take it out. Herbs as well. I'd say even though it's mac and cheese, you kind of just want everything to be yellow. The sort of greenness from some herbs doesn't hurt, and it definitely gives it sort of more flavour.
I mean, you say yellow, but really beige is what we're beige grey, you know.
Yeah, if you really want to cook the pasta in the cheese and then just leave it for a few hours until it's the soup. That's kind of how English people cook pasta a lot of the time.
Yeah, no need to strain. It's all slurry.
Exactly that.
I remember that kind of old school comfort food of it, as a kid. And sometimes it was slices of tomato and bits of tomato. That was a kind of a big help. And also maybe just a teaspoon of mustard in the sauce.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gives it a little bit of a tang. Might help.
Why not?
We are out of time. Where should people go to find your stuff and buy it? Henry?
So find me at henryhampshire.com. I do a lot of events, supper club events. Once lockdown's over, they'll be all around Surrey and South London. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of masterclasses, so you can join me live on Zoom. Also, you can buy my vegan cheese kit on Amazon, Etsy, and also on my own website. So go to henryhampshire.com, or my Instagram is chef_Hampshire.
Perfect. Nadia, what about you?
TheVeganItalianKitchen.com is my website and blog. My cookbook, Discovering Vegan Italian, you can buy it through the website, and that will send you links, international and Australia, so we can get that everywhere where we are, and also on social media. In Australia, obviously, I'm doing some cooking classes and events, but for everyone around the world, just keep following along in social media, and I'm hoping to bring out my second Italian cookbook on Southern Italian cuisine this year. Fingers crossed for mid-year, but it's actually going to be more about the traditionally, authentically Italian vegan food that is out there.
Perfect. That's it from us for now. Huge thanks to Henry Hampshire and Nadia Fragnito. Fragnito.
Perfetto.
Oh, please. You're so lovely. Don't forget, you can send your questions on any kind of food topic to podcast@veganlifemag.com. And do subscribe to the podcast and do share it if you've got any vegan friends. It would be great to spread the word. Vegan Life magazine is available in shops all over the country, or you can search Vegan Life in your app store if that's the sort of thing you do. That's all over the world. Or you can get a subscription to the magazine at www.veganlifemag.com, and you'll never miss an issue, and it's a bit cheaper, frankly. We'll be back next week with more vegan gloriousness. Until then, from me, Jake Yapp, as they say in Italy, au revoir!
Oh my gosh, we can't be too clever, can we?
No, there's no danger of that here.
This has been a Swanburst Media production.